All right, everyone, so let's talk about these leaks on the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines. It did not take very long for Ukraine to come out and blame these leaks on the Russians and say, look, this was done by Russia, direct act of sabotage done by Russia in order to destabilize Europe, to make Europeans afraid of shortages in energy, in natural gas. This is what this is about. This is direct act of terrorism by Russian government, by Kremlin, and it also did not take very long for the Polish government to pretty much say the same damn thing, that this was done by Russia. And Poland has come out and said this was a direct act of, I'm trying to do a Polish accent, this was a direct act of sabotage by the Russians. The Russians did it. Kremlin did this. This was done by Kremlin. But here's the thing. No one can really prove, or no one has so far really proved emphatically who did it, right? We can't do that right now. We don't have all of the information to come up with an emphatic conclusion as to who did this, right? We know that somebody did this. We know that human beings were responsible for this. This was not an act done. This was not some natural disaster that caused these leaks. It's been concluded already that they were caused by underwater explosives. So obviously, these leaks are the cause of human deliberate action. But the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, the Russians put in billions of dollars in order to build this pipeline. And the reason why they invested so much into this pipeline, the reason why they wanted this pipeline in the first place, was to bypass Ukraine and Poland. Because for years, every time the Russians were transporting natural gas into Europe, they had to pay transit fees, billions of dollars in transit fees to Poland and Ukraine. Of course, the Poles and the Ukrainians love this because it put in a lot of money into their economies, but it also gave a lot of geopolitical leverage and significance to Ukraine and Poland, because Russia had to pay Poland and Ukraine in transit fees in order to transport the natural gas into Europe. That gave leverage to Poland and Ukraine to make demands from Russia, to demand concessions from Russia. It gave it geostrategic significance. It gave these two countries geostrategic significance. And the Poles were terrified of Nord Stream 2. I remember doing a video on Nord Stream 2 back in 2018, 2019, one of those years. And I remember there were numerous Poles who put comments on the video saying that Nord Stream 2 is a geopolitical weapon. It's a way for Russia to make Poland insignificant. The Ukrainians were saying the same thing. They said, once Russia no longer has to go through Ukraine to transport natural gas into Europe, Ukraine loses its geopolitical leverage with Russia. Russia doesn't need Ukraine anymore. It doesn't need to respect Ukraine's sovereignty and autonomy anymore, because we don't really need to respect you anymore. We can just ship natural gas directly to Germany. We don't have to pay you money anymore. We don't have to waste money paying you guys in transit fees and all this stuff. And so Ukraine and Poland, because of Nord Stream 2, they lose that grip that they once had, that political grip. And the Poles were terrified. Well, here's the thing. Now the Poles are saying, look at this evil act that Russia has done, blowing up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, or causing a leak in the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Poland's Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said, and I'll read to you what he said, quote, "It was probably an act of sabotage, so it is most likely a signal from Russia, because we are waiting for these circumstances to be confirmed, and it is something very disturbing. This is something that shows what means and mechanisms the Russians can resort to in order to destabilize Europe even more." This is what he said. These are his exact words. Wait a second. I thought you guys wanted the Nord Stream 2 pipeline gone. Why would Russia remove a pipeline that it built, that it invested so much money into, in order to bypass Poland and Ukraine? Why would it blow up that pipeline? It doesn't make sense. I also have to add that Radoslav Sikorski, a former Polish defense and foreign minister who's also a member of the European Parliament, made a special thank you to the USA for causing the leaks on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Just saying. A very well-known Polish politician has said, thank you, USA, for causing the leaks on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Now, Joe Biden said that if Russia invaded Ukraine, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline will be gone. He said that there will no longer be a Nord Stream 2, and he said, we will bring it to an end. We will bring an end to it. These are his exact words. We will bring an end to it being the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Why would Russia damage a pipeline that it wanted to build for the purpose of bypassing Ukraine and Poland? Why? Russia is in the middle of a war with Ukraine. It invested billions of dollars to build the Nord Stream 2 pipeline in order to bypass Ukraine. So in the middle of a war with Ukraine, Russia destroys a pipeline that it built in order to bypass Ukraine in the first place. This doesn't make sense. Who wanted the Nord Stream 2 pipeline to disappear? The Americans. The Germans didn't want it gone. The Germans wanted the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. They collaborated with the Russians to build the Nord Stream 2 pipeline so they can get natural gas directly into Europe. Now, the Americans have been worried about Nord Stream 2. Why? Because the Americans sell natural gas to Europe. And the Americans do not want Europeans to be dependent on Russia for natural gas. And so you have all these natural gas producers in America who are saying, oh, buy our natural gas. Don't be a slave to Russia. Be a slave to America. Be our slave. And that's what's happening, everybody. This is a fight between the Americans and the Russians on who is going to sell natural gas to the Europeans. That's why the Americans didn't want Nord Stream 2 built in the first place. The Russians wanted Nord Stream 2 built so that they could sell natural gas directly to Europe without having to pay billions of dollars to the Ukrainians and the Poles. So you mean to tell me that in the middle of a war with Ukraine, we are supposed to believe that the Russians would destroy a pipeline that it built in order to bypass Ukraine in the first place? It doesn't make any sense. Again, now there are people saying that, well, no, the Russians did this so that they could mess up the Europeans. It is still possible that that is true, right? I'm still open to it. But for now, I will say that the main suspect is the United States in this whole thing. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.